At the heart of an industrial revolution is an innovation that changes everything. Building AI Boston sees artificial intelligence as a renaissance. From the heart of innovation and the mecca of tech learning, we bring you AI for Real People, a conversation for everyone. Karen Kelly has been a catalyst for change across the healthcare, marketing, media, and technology sectors. She's fueled by three core values: innovation, connection, and compassion. She's a three-time founder with executive roles in each, and her businesses have been awarded as one of Boston's 50 on fire startups, featured in AdAge and the Boston Business Journal. She's a prominent voice in disrupting the digital marketing industry and a regular at Startup Boston. Today, we're going to talk about her current venture, Launch by Lunch, the first virtual no-code accelerator, and how she uses AI to empower people. Welcome to the show, Karen Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to reconnect with you ladies over AI once again.
Yay. And thanks for reminding me. We met at Dr. Felicia Newhouse's AI Powered Women's Summit back in January. And I got to tell you, I am not usually one for FOMO, but the minute I met you, I'm like, wow, she's a person I would hang out with. And now you and Cara get to do that on a regular basis.
We're just waiting. I'm waiting to get that email. I've moved to Boston. You are very welcome here anytime.
Well, I mean, I'm impressed by your career span, and there's a lot of things in that 20 plus years, but let's start out with your own history. Were you into tech as a kid? Were you influenced by science
Mhm.
fiction?
No. I was into sports, and I was into school. But it was different when I was a kid, right? I mean, if you think I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, I mean, it was that was a job for big executives. Startups really weren't. They were nowhere near what they are now, and so this idea that you could kind of grow up and start a company in tech when you're 24 or 28 or 32, really having no background in tech was just absolutely not something that anybody thought about then.
No, I agree, and that's not what I didn't hang out in that field, or I mean, I didn't, this is crazy, but I didn't take my first computer class till I was in college. I
My first
I sh
computer class, I'm trying to think of what my first, I guess mine was probably college also. I took typing in high school. That was
I was
probably
gonna
like,
say, yeah,
yeah,
right,
typing.
yeah.
okay, we
Typing.
just dated ourselves, but thank you for jumping in the pond with me. That
You're
just sucks
welcome.
it sucks to hear that out loud, but that's okay. So, but let me understand this arc for you, because it's 20 years across the healthcare field, marketing, media, and technology sectors. Now you have a startup. If I'm looking at this through line or an arc and what drives you, I'm going to say it's empowerment, but would you care to share anything about the why behind that? Why is that so fascinating to you?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. I think, to kind of give a very brief synopsis of those 20 years, really it's, advertising was about storytelling. And for me, it was like brand empowerment. And then felt like my soul was turning a little bit black. I decided to get a master's. And I actually went to work with brain injured patients. And so I kind of went to the other side of the coin, but also communication, connection, empathy, same ties that bind, same things that got me excited. But now I was helping people recover from really serious brain injuries. So that's a whole other level of kind of fulfillment. And then I just happened to pick up a camera one day and started storytelling through the lens and realized, holy smokes, like we're in a connection crisis in our country and people don't spend enough time thinking about the people sitting next to them on the couch every day, and built a whole business, a seven-figure business, like within a year, really storytelling families and companies and weddings, and really getting into like underneath the hood of why these relationships are so important to people before I ever picked up a lens. It was very experiential. In any case, all about empowering these people to really stand and be witness to each other. And then moving into tech, I was hired through that business. I was cajoled into joining a technology startup back in 2018. And that's actually how I made the bridge to tech, because they saw me as this pretty amazing storyteller and they were having trouble telling their story. And so that's how I ended up moving into tech as a CMO and then president of that company. Really for me, Purposely Social and Launch by Lunch, two very different companies, but they are all about empowering people to build the lives that they've dreamed of, but maybe have never had the courage or know how to do.
Hmm. That's fantastic. And Len, we're going to get into both of those companies in a minute. So I have a real affinity with that story of jumping from one thing. The Black and Soul thing. I mean, I got into advertising in the 90s, which was not tech then. It was tear sheets and old school, right? But
VHS.
yeah, right. But gosh, we're dating ourselves today so much, but I really appreciate that journey because I think that the natural evolution for me is the curiosity of people. So
A great way to put
incredible.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And storytelling is as old as time, right? I mean, that's
Mm.
whether you're using new tech or not, it's like that's part of our story as humans, right? And Karen, when you were telling me about when we were at that event at MIT, and you were talking about what Purposely Social does, I remember getting very, very excited about the purpose of the tool. So, would love to hear more, and also just thinking about this narrative and this connectivity that you have about social connections. I think is fascinating. So, tell us about Purposely Social and what it's meant to do.
Sure. So Purposely Social is a mobile app. You can download it now from the App Store or Google Play. And this application is all about making it fast, easy, and fun to reconnect with friends, neighbors, and your community. So our MVP is really all about getting rid of the friction of trying to line up plans with groups of friends, right? They say the average group of four takes like 52 text messages over 12 days to
Whoa.
make plans.
So true.
And that's if you don't fall down like the black hole of text messages that die, right? Like text message threads that die. So that's a real problem. And so when you use the application now, you can just select the friends you want to hang out with, click match availability, and boom, it'll surface the times when everybody's free without showing each other, each other's calendars. Well, we've really done it in a very data privacy centric fashion. And this product, this company came out of when I left my last job in 2022. The reason was because for like a year and a half, our school district just couldn't find space for my son in after school care. And as you can imagine, having a 6-year-old come through the door every day at 2:15 is like impossible while you're trying to run a company. And I just sort of looked at like the situation and I was tearing my hair out. And every day I was forced to make a decision. Do I be the parent he needs me to be, or do I be an executive to this company? And finally, I just said, like, being a parent is that is more important. And so I made the choice and I resigned. But when I did, I got up the next day and I said, I'm fixing this problem. And I went on Facebook and I went into the moms groups and I just said, who doesn't have after school care? Send me an email. I'm fixing this. And the next day I had 75 email addresses. And so it was a wild story that then created this grassroots movement called Parents for After School Solutions. We essentially mapped out all the land assets for the town. We, politicked with all the parties we needed to in town, but launched 2 new programs in 7 months right here in Wayland.
Awesome.
It's a really wild story of how I spent my time off. But the net of all this is that when I went back and looked at why this problem existed to begin with, why were we all suffering in silence alone in our homes, right? It's because we're all so damn busy running into out of Boston, fueling our careers, being parents, being wives, being sisters, doing all the things we need to do. And, we weren't connecting on it. And so I kind of really set about to study what has caused this sort of atomization of our lives, the dissolution of community. It's been happening for 50 years for various reasons, but really now, there's so many reasons why you don't have to leave your house every day. Whether you work from home, you can order things, and it's really convenient in a lot of ways, but it's also caused a lot of like pulling apart of our community threads. And so the number one question I got back when I went back to the 600 parents who I now just gotten after school care for their children, willing to do me a few favors, will you fill out the survey, please? And the number one answer I got about why this problem exists, why aren't we spending time together, was logistics, which is why our MVP covers this idea around like instant calendar matching. But then the second answer I got to that question was really, anxiety, brain space, overwhelm. And so really, obviously that's a tougher problem to solve and it's more nuanced, but really that's where AI comes in. And that's kind of where we're going with things next in terms of thinking about how AI can jump in and say, hey, Cara, you're down on your steps this week. You and Karen walked together last Friday at noon. You're both free this Friday at 2. Do you want us to go ahead and just ask her if she wants to go for a walk? We'll take
Oh
care of
my
it for
God.
you.
Yes, please.
Right. I know. I'm like, that's my review. So, and we're not like far away from that at all. So, so yeah, that's how kind of Purposely Social all came to be and thinking about community and empowerment.
I love that. And there's like something you didn't mention, but there's this feeling of like guilt or shame as a mom when you're like, oh, everybody else has it completely together and they manage to, juggle all 50,000 parts of their lives. And what's wrong with me? I can't. I mean, maybe I'm telling you how I feel, but like I always feel like I'm dropping a ball somewhere. So anything, and with AI in particular, how it can help us sort of let go of some of that guilt or shame that we don't have it perfectly is just magical, I think.
I think that's such a great point. And I think that's actually probably under the hood as well of like, why is this happening? It's because like nobody wants to look like the parent who doesn't have it together.
Right.
We all have that one friend, who's just
Mm.
like always in line, but the rest of us are like trailing in their wake,
Mhm.
So I think that's a really good point about the shame.
So
Yeah.
I had the opposite shame. I was one of those people that classically underscheduled my kid, and everybody else had like 5 different activities for the week. And I'm like, so I like to have nothing to do. So it's really interesting. And you're really hitting a systemic problem. And it's interesting that it's happening here, it's happening everywhere because we all blame COVID. Oh yeah, we couldn't get together for COVID, but it was happening before that. I met my group of park moms in the park. We exercised, our 2-year-olds ran around under our feet, and then they were friends for life. And then at some point it started falling off. And I blamed it on, well, everybody's got these after school activities. And I just didn't want to admit I got nothing going on. I like nothing. So I like your approach, this anonymous look at the calendar that doesn't have to say, in a group text, which I agree as a disaster. Don't try to plan anything in a group text, friends. It's just the least efficient way to do it. But if AI is kind of peeking over our shoulder and giving us prompts, I love the idea that I don't have to say, hey, I'm the slacker mom that's got nothing going on. And everybody else, where do you fit in my life? Because I think shame in whatever direction is a huge hurdle to overcome, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Could not agree with you more. And I think like in the same way that shame can be a hurdle, there's tremendous power in looking like you're 2 steps ahead of the game. So conversely, to be able to use AI and by the way, there's also this notion that we've done a bunch of research on, like people love to help each other, love to help their friends, love to help community. So we're also kind of like nudging into that space of like, hey, um, you know, Kara looks like she could maybe use a lift. Like, would you like to like send her a text or, there's different ways that we're like kind of designing around being able to like give some hints without giving too much about people who are in your inner circle.
So interesting. Oh, I love the way that robots can make us better humans, but okay, I'm gonna unpack the next facet of your professional world, which is Launch by Lunch. Everything on congratulations on your social media because it's got me so curious. When I figured out that Launch by Lunch was really this AI powered system that can help people with something called vibes coding, I'm in a full out ask the dumb question. Tell us what is vibes coding? Because I even embarrassed that I don't know what that is. So help me feel smarter today, Karen.
It's really simple. Vibe coding is just using AI tools. Typically, it's AI prototyping tools to build new products. And instead of having to work through APIs or build in a traditional manner with ones and zeros, this is really about how do we use AI to connect the different parts that we need to connect to create a product that's usable and revenue generating.
So if you can use ChatGPT, you can literally build a business in that same kind of way?
Well, ChatGPT is an LLM, which is a large language model, meaning that it's very good at doing like research for you and aggregating information and doing analysis. And then, there's different levels of things that they've put out, like their deep research level. There's O3, there's O4, without getting too complicated. They all sort of specialize in different areas, but that's more about analysis and data gathering, as opposed to an AI prototyping tool, meaning I can go into this tool and I can say, I want to build an app that helps me track my habits every day.
Mm.
And it will actually take a few minutes and build an application with clickable buttons and pages and, faux data sets if you want to fill it with that. That is like the first step of a working prototype, but it looks like what you would see on your phone.
Wow. Okay, my mind is reeling.
Okay, so let's put Anna on the spot. Anna,
Uh-oh.
we love you, Anna. So Anna has a AI show, but she probably would admit to the listeners that maybe not a super techie. So
Oh,
are you saying, Karen, that Anna could conceivably have an idea of something she'd like to solve? We were just talking about her tortoise earlier, and the different kinds of food that her tortoise likes to eat, and the different moods he'll get into if he has watermelon versus kale versus. So, so she could say she wants to build. It's a little silly. She wants to build some kind of app that will help her make sure her tortoise is getting a variety of food. She could just go into this vibe coding environment and create something that would help her keep her tortoise in its happiest mood.
Sure. And she could start reporting in like the different effects of the different foods. And then, absolutely, there's like endless possibilities there. Yes, we
oh,
could make that an hour.
Okay,
that's
so Anna, I think you need to build this app for your
okay.
tortoise.
I've got a few other ideas, but that one's practical. I can appreciate that one.
Yes, that would be good. But that's interesting because it really changes then who is allowed to be in tech.
You hit the nail on the head, Cara. And I think for me, that's part of the reason why when this idea came to kind of me and my fractional CTO at the time, Stephen Smith, that's the biggest motivator for me, right? If we go back to empowerment and we go back to kind of cutting the red tape, that's what I do. I'm a red tape cutter, and it doesn't matter what industry it is. And for me, for this, I've spent almost a decade now in tech. My previous startup, we were yeah, at every startup before 2025, you're beholden to a team of developers that you sort of lack clarity on timelines and cost. And I think for me, most recently, building out Purposely Social is our initial build on it. As a non-technical founder, you don't know enough to be able to push back on dates and times and what's
Mhm.
needed. And it's the amount of money. This is also a very old story. The
Mm.
amount of money and time and resources, and I will also say, like, mental health impacts of doing that on your own with very little funding, most of which is you're bootstrapping, right? Because it's your MVP, is harrowing. And that for me is not an exaggeration. And I Steven still laughs when I say this, but when I started vibe coding, I started sleeping better, like,
Mm.
immediately.
Oh, I love that because if you think that makes a lot of sense because right now we're living in an environment where there just feels like there's so many problems that are not solvable.
Mhm.
And if the idea that this approach to AI could help people with good ideas come to a solution more quickly, like that's a really amazing benefit for everyone, right?
Oh yeah. And Cara, you've had this experience, but you're married to a coder, so you had a great idea. You guys are AI founders, but the amount of work that's gone into building Describe is incredible. I would never think to do that. And yet I'm step for step with you about the justice system, right? So but it's like
Right.
it's really narrowing that, possibility, that playing field. And how are VCs responding to this? Because that now it's like the whole thing is disrupted, right?
I think that's a great question. I spoke to a few of them last week, and I was sort of surprised by some of the feedback. I think some of them are also feeling completely overwhelmed by the topic and the tools and haven't perhaps dug in as much as they maybe could or should. I think some of them also correctly identify that there are probably some bad investments being made right now
Mhm.
in tools that just aren't defensible enough. Because the
Mhm.
downside of vibe coding is that if you can vibe code it by lunch, someone else can too. And
Right.
so the effect of that is that you need to be able to think through a really effective strategy for your product around moats, right? Moats being
Mhm.
the things that protect your company from being copied. And so some of those things can be big, robust, connected communities. It can be really big partnerships. There's a lot of different ways to think about it, but that is to me the biggest thing that I see for the forward thinking VCs thinking about is, okay, how do we think about this is a prototype that's working, it's generating monthly revenue. How do we protect it? So I think that that's a piece. And one of the things though I also want to say about fundraising that's changing right now is we won't have to go after those early rounds anymore where we're trying to raise 250, 500, even 750, because we can build one of these tools for 50, $100 a month.
Yeah.
We can build it in a few weeks, and we are like, it's like liberation day for non-technical visionaries. And so
Mm.
um, that is also like, I think, like, a lot of VCs aren't quite prepared for that yet, but it's huge on the empowerment checklist. And I think that that's really going to change over the next 2 years. Things are going to change like venture capital as we know it, I think, is actually going to holistically change. You're not going to see the same equity grabs, you're not going to see the same fundraising amounts. It's going to be really different, and it's I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and we have an upcoming episode with an expert in the field, and she's talked a lot about the traditional models of VC and how it's measured over time against different, tech bro companies. We'll be honest, it's going to be a very exciting thing to break down. Didn't mean to spring that one on you. I just enjoy the fact that you're a disruptor, a trailblazer. Like, let's go, everybody, keep up. You know.
Yeah. It's funny. I don't know if you've ever used this tool. It's called Crystal Nose. It's like the very first AI tool I ever used. It's a Chrome plugin for LinkedIn, and they're probably 5 or 6 years old. And you can look at like 8 or 9 profiles on LinkedIn for free through it. But what it does is it uses AI to provide you with a personality analysis of the person's LinkedIn profile, as well as like
No
how
way.
to sell to them. Like, it's
Whoa.
phenomenal. Like, I don't get on a call without using it. Like, give them details or don't give them details. Like, make it funny and tell a personal story, or absolutely stick to the facts. Like, it's
Wow.
unbelievable.
Whoa.
I highly recommend. So in any case, though, it's fun to look at your own profile also. And like, one of the headlines for me is likes to find ways around the rules. So
Ah,
here we are.
that's good. We need more of that in this world.
I think it's such a crazy name, Crystal Nose. I'm like, what
Yeah.
in the world? It's almost like a truffle pig, right? It's giving you like a real whiff of the good stuff. I don't know what that name came from, but it's very intriguing.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Mhm.
So one thing about vibe coding I'm interested in is how it opens the door to sort of non-traditional founders. Like we all know that women get like nothing from the VCs basically. So what do you think about that? About how it can maybe change what a entrepreneur looks like?
Um, I think that it will open up not just in terms of who can build, right? You don't have to be part of that well-connected, typically boys club, because let's face it, that's what the numbers tell us. As you mentioned, females tend to get about 1.8% of the VC funding annually each year. So it doesn't just change, though, the gender or the skin color of the founders, it actually changes what products are going to get made.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think that is so exciting. The visions of people who have very different brains than a traditional developer, or prioritize very different things than what a traditional VC, or even what the sort of community might support. I think is extremely exciting, and I think it's going to, a lot of these industries that have lagged behind, women's health, we're starting to see the rise now, but I think like industries like that are going to get much, much bigger quickly.
You just reminded me of something. I took a big break when I had my kiddo, and I was fortunate to do that because I wanted to. But when I got back in the game and started going to business meetups, and they were the kind where people kind of share ideas and insights about, and I had marketing background, but I just realized people were leaning in for my advice. And then I went, oh my gosh, I've suddenly become that demographic that everybody wants to tap, this certain income bracket and this, mommy stuff. And I went, whoa, now I've got insights that are valuable. I think you've hit the nail on the head too with this idea that the products are going to change, and I think it's a lucrative sector, and I think it's a renaissance, and I think you've proven our point. And I want to encourage you to come back with anything and everything insight to trends and things that are happening as a result of Lunch by Lunch. In fact, I'm going to throw this out there that I would love to take that challenge and go from, like, I wouldn't say I'm a Luddite. That's a terrible word. That's like the people that go sabotage technology because they just don't want to use it. But if you can really turn that around in my head, like what's possible, I'm sort of encouraged that this is another jumping off point that I wouldn't mind taking. So
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, I love this. I'll jump in the deep end, or the shallow end, really, with you.
Thank you.
It's yeah. I mean, and this is really like a big piece of what we're doing right now at Launch by Lunch is these small group cohorts where we just take people through week by week, step them through building products in a small community setting, which is so important too. I mean, I think part of the real pain right now that we're addressing is that we're all trying to drink from this AI fire hose, right? There's new products out constantly. And it's like, okay, I'm going to try and spend 20 minutes today and learn these 3 new tools. Like, doing it alone, it's awful. And so, like, I always say, like, AI is better with a friend, So building out this community setting, in this no code splaining space is really just something that we're very excited about. So in any case, I'd love to take you up on this. Let's do it live.
All right, let's do it live. You just heard that, listeners at home. We're going to do this live. I'm going to jump in the shallow end, and my friend is going to give me water wings. So I'm really training wheels. I love that. And you know what, ladies? Again, kudos to Boston, because I find that there's this really inclusive attitude. When I went to Dr. Newhouse's meetup and met everyone, that couldn't be more friendly and inclusive and really wanting to see all boats rise. That's something special about where you live. Yeah.
For sure.
Totally agree with that. And I will say too, the startup community in the 2.5 weeks that Launch by Lunch has been in existence and the 2.5 cohorts we've already sold out, the startup community has been extremely welcoming to us. Techstars, Startup Boston, Women Who Venture, we've formulated partnerships with all of them already. So it is exciting, and they are very willing to embrace kind of this new concept and this maybe new vision of leadership.
Well, you're very shiny, Karen. I can't imagine anybody kind of trying to tune you out. I mean, I think the name says, he's got his way.
That doesn't count.
He's got too much of me.
Purposely social has a whole new meaning to me. I think that what you're doing is incredible, and empowerment is a big deal. Thank you for that. And for our listeners at home, there is definitely a 2.0. You've heard that teaser, right? We are going to get down to business on air. And I don't care if I sink or swim. I've got good friends here. So thank you both for this conversation. Any last words? Kara, Karen, take us out.
Thanks so much for having me. If you're interested in learning more about Launch by Lunch, come to our website. We're running accelerators now. It's launchbylunch.co.
Launchbylunch.co. And that's in real time for our listeners on radio. There is an event happening on Thursday, this coming Thursday. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're actually launching our 4th cohort on Thursday. So if you move quick, you might be able to get in that one before it fills up.
Woohoo! Like and subscribe and check out our liner notes for more great tips. And Karen, please come back and fill us in because you are one to watch. Wow. Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Building AI Boston. Stay tuned for more enlightening episodes that put you at the forefront of the conversations shaping our future.